Okay, Rabbi, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sweet Dreams, Paying for Positivity. This is episode 23 of our special Talmud on Dreams series. And tonight, we're going to have buildings collapse, skulls will crack, melodies will break. But somehow it's all good because somebody remembered to bring his wallet. We're going to follow Rava as he returns to the infamous Bar Hedaya. But this time he pays. We're going to see how some of the most ominous dream imagery can become a blessing if it's seen through the lenses of faith and Torah wisdom and positive interpretation. But that, as we will find out tonight, is not absolute. It's not an absolute science. This special class is dedicated by Doctors Eva Rosenthal and Jeffrey Solomon and their family in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Jeffrey's mother. I knew her. She was a wonderful lady. Her name was Malka, the daughter of Shalom. May her neshama have an aliyah.
Amen, amen.
And as we say, af ala yidin a yeshia. Boisai, with no further ado. Yeah. All the
Rabbi,
Kranka
how come you called him Ben Hedaya? Isn't it Bar Hedaya?
Ben Hedaya, Bar Hedaya, it's the same thing.
It is?
Bar, Ben, it's Aramaic, right? Yeah,
Okay.
basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing. But you can call him Bar Hedaya. That's how they call me in the yeshiva world. Okay. My dear friends, we are on Daf Nun Vav, on page 56, Amud Aleph, the first side. We're still right in the middle of the story of Ben or Bar Hedaya. And Rava, at this point, has arrived alone, not like previously. Previously, Rava was coming along with his friend Abaya. And the reason that Rava was coming with Abaya was because they seemed to have very similar dreams. Also, Abaya got very good interpretations. So he was good company. But that seems to run out at some point, right? And then Abaya is not coming along, and Rava is on his own. And in last week's Torah class, we specifically addressed the idea of Rava coming alone, not with Abaya, and why that might have been. Today, Rava is going to be paying. He never did that before. And the obvious question is, what motivated Rava to suddenly open his wallet? And why is he pay? And how does that make a difference? And can a person who is interpreting in dreams really, kind of choose fate or decide how things should be in the end? Those are some very important questions that with Hashem's help we are going to be answering. L'seif, I should tell you that as the Gemara introduces the lesson with the words in the end, this is the final encounter between the sage and the dream interpreter. From here onward, Rava and Bar Hedaya will be separating, going their separate ways, but not quite so fast. As you will find out in the next episode, the dreams in saltwater, all of a sudden, things are going to go a little south, as we say, for Bar Hedaya. But this is the last time Rava comes and asks him to interpret dreams for him. And the Gemara says, L'seif, in the end of this whole long exchange, Asa Rava arrived, v'yohev le'agra, and he made a payment. Now the Gemara doesn't tell us why Rava suddenly decided to change his attitude and make a payment. And so I was curious to know what any of the Mefarshim say. I did find only one Mefarish that actually gives us some kind of explanation as to why he might have made a payment. I want to share what the Birchas Avram says, and then I want to tell you maybe with my hunches, because I have a different hunch.
I want to.
You have a hunch? I love hunches. Okay, good. So let's do what the Birchas Avram says. Let me tell you why I have difficulty with it. I'm going to tell you what my hunch is, and we're going to hear Michael's hunch. So my first blush is like this. The Birchas Avram suggests that it is possible that Rava is facing off with Bar Hedaya, and Bar Hedaya is starting to feel guilty because he interpreted everything Rava said in a negative way. And maybe maybe Bar Hedaya knew that his words could have impact. And by the way, they will. And they do. And in the end, Rava forgives him for everything except for the most ominous interpretation when it hurts his wife. And that Rava says, I'm not going to forgive you for. And the Bar Hedaya ends up in pieces, quite literally, because of this. So they say that Bar Hedaya might have had some serious charata, serious regret. And Bar Hedaya here saw good things. He didn't see any bad things, but he didn't want to say anything. He said to himself, he doesn't pay. I don't say anything. I don't have to say bad things, but I'm not saying good things. And Rava is waiting, Shalom, Rava is waiting to hear him say something, and he's not saying anything. So Bar Hedaya says, look, I have some nice things to say, but you got to feed the jukebox. So if you'll pay me, then I'll speak. And that's when Rava goes ahead and he pays. So my challenge with this is that the Gemara is a little backwards. If that would be the case, why shouldn't first Rava say what he saw, and then Bar Hedaya would or wouldn't interpret? Right? So he just all of a sudden, Lasayf, Rava shows up, and he's here with money. He's here with a wallet. Why? What motivated him? So let's say your hunch.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you my hunch.
So what's the difference here? The difference is that he comes without abaya.
That last time also, you missed
Say
it.
that again?
Last time also he came without a buyer.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
I tried to listen to it. It's very difficult without,
It's no fun when the class is not live. I understand.
Right. Okay. So, but anyway, he comes without abaya, so he thinks, like maybe abaya was paying for him.
Right.
Like Bar Hedaya got paid. He got paid. So maybe I should pay,
Okay, so the problem with it's a good hunch. It's a good hunch, except that last week we already had Rava alone with Bar Hedaya, and Abaya wasn't there, and he still didn't pay, and it still wasn't pretty. So this is my hunch. When you have things that are so ominous, Rava starts to get a little nervous here. He says, I think I need a little help. When you have lettuce covering something, or even like last week, some teeth falling out. I mean, teeth falling out is not the end of the world. But this week, his house collapses. That could be mortally dangerous. And Abaya's house collapses, or palace collapses. And then next thing we know is his walls are collapsing, and the stones are being distributed. And then his head cracks open and his brains fall out. So Rava feels, okay, all right, this now I need help. Till now, it wasn't such a big deal to see goodness in these dreams. But and of course, up until the last episode, there was goodness in every dream. Bar Hedaya had no problem, and Rava thought, good. So there probably is goodness contained within it. And the fact that Bar Hedaya is going to give me a negative interpretation will take care of the haughtiness that I might feel, and it will humble me, as we talked about in many episodes ago, that this idea of hearing sometimes bad things or being frightened by a dream can be like a kapara. So he got his kapara like that, and he said, okay, no, and now good things can happen. And you see that for Abaya, there were actually good things. There were good things that were happening. But this time, the dream is so ominous. Like if your head cracks open, he doesn't need to have anybody tell him anything bad. Your house collapses. That's like bad enough. So he had enough pain with the dream itself, and he knows, he was watching what happened. Like, but somehow every time Abaya was paying, and there was fantastic interpretations. So my hunch is this time Rava said, you know what? I think this time I need to pay, because I already had the kapara. I already got all the negative stuff, and I'm hoping it turns out positive.
But did they actualize it? The only time I see it is with the turnips and the blows, like where the vision, prophecy, whatever you want to call it, actually came true. Like he's interpreting his dream.
That's
evidence that they actually happened.
I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying, Martin, because I'll tell you why I love what you're saying. Because there is evidence.
Oh, okay.
There is evidence where, in the end, Rava's wife dies. But there's a dispute when she dies. And there's a Tosfos that we're going to learn later on in this Gemara. There's a Tosfos that says that she died after Abaya died, and after he became the Rosh Hashiva, because there's a story of after him becoming Rosh Hashiva, and there was certain etiquette that she was involved with. And the question gets asked, 1 second, how is Rav Chisda's daughter still alive? Didn't she die already? And one of the answers that's given, and my personal favorite of the answers is, she didn't die yet, she died later. And I'll tell you why I love what you're saying, Martin, because unwittingly you just gave us the answer as to why Rava decided to pay. Because guess what? This is the first time, the last interpretation, the end of the last episode was the business with the turnips. That's when Rava got beaten.
Yeah.
The guy said, you're going to get beaten, and he got beaten. He said, oy vey, this works. I better pay. Because the only time that there's an instant reaction that we learned about was the beating. And that's the immediate past episode. So maybe that's another hunch. I don't know why the Birchas Avram doesn't say that. I don't know why the Birchas Avram says what he says. I'm sure he's much smarter than me and you, and he probably had good reasons for discounting our approach, but I don't know what they are. So that's why I'm still sharing my approach and my hunch, and to me it makes sense. So for me it's going to work for today because it helps me understand the Torah as I learn it, and that's really what it's about. Okay, so Rava pays. And he begins to convey some of this really, really ominous, terrible stuff. He says, Chazai Oshita Dinfal. I saw an Ashita that fell. Now, I'm pronouncing Ashita with a tuf, like, the Sephardic tuf, the Mizrahi tuf, because that's how some of you like to pronounce it. I would read it if I was learning Ashisa, but it's a suf, not a tuf. But the question is, what in heaven is an Ashisa?
A wall.
Well, you're so sure about that, eh?
No.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why you shouldn't be so sure about it, and I'm gonna introduce the next question to you, which I think I have an answer for, but that's coming. So Rashi says nothing here. Rashi doesn't say what Ashisa is, but he's explained lots of words to us. He did not explain the word Ashisa to us. Does not comment. Okay, so you say, what do you want? Rashi doesn't comment. Yeah, but elsewhere he does. In fact, in this very Masechet, only 2 pages ago, Rashi does comment. How do you like that? On Daf Nun Dalet, which is just 2 pages ago, we have the Gemara says that it's the beginning of the 9th chapter, which we're learning on Daf Nun Dalet. You can turn back and look. It's in the very bottom of the page. The Gemara talks about surviving extraordinary events.
Is this Amud Aleph or Amud?
Yeah, Amud Aleph, Nun Dalet, Amud Aleph, page 54. Side A, it's probably like 3 or 4. No, go back. Yeah, you look at the bottom line of Rashi. So what the Gemara says, Atparka le'ashisa, or Rashi says, Nafla chaymais bayis shahaya samachlai. So the house right next to him fell down. And Rashi says, asparka, which means from the word lihit parek, to fall apart, he says, Nafla chaymais bayis shahaya samachlai. So Rashi says it means the walls of a house. The walls of a house. Why does Rashi tell us that it means the walls of a house on Daf Nun Daled, and he doesn't tell it to us on Daf Nun Vav? So you're going to say, you already said it. Yeah. How many times do you want Rashi to say the same thing? So the truth is, in the Chumash, that is a rule. Rashi never repeats himself. That is true. However, I'm not so sure that in the Gemara it's always true. And the most interesting thing that I found is that in the same Masechet, Rashi explains the words Ashita earlier, and he doesn't rely on what he said on Daf Chof Ches to explain it again on Daf Nun Daled. If you turn back to Daf Chof Ches, page 28, I think your version, you might be Berachot 2 stars. I don't think you have page 28. In Perek Tfilas HaShachar, which is the 4th chapter, the Gemara tells a story about the great sage and leader of the Sanhedrin, Rabban Gamliel, who came to visit Rabbi Yehoshua. And when he came to Rabbi Yehoshua, he saw tremendous poverty. And he was shaken by it, because Rabbi Gamliel was an extremely wealthy man. And he said to him, I see the walls of your house are black. I see the walls of your house are black. And he says, it seems from your house that you're like involved in menial labor, like a blacksmith. And Rabbi Yeshua responds and he says, woe is to the generation whose leadership does not understand the suffering borne by the common people. So Rabbi Gamliel appears to be a little detached. He appears to be like in an ivory castle of opulence and luxury, not knowing about the poverty of the other sages, who, by the way, were just as learned. But they didn't have what we call a trust fund. They would work all day and study Torah all night. I don't know when they slept. But anyway, I'm not here to rain on Rabbi Gamliel, but I'm just telling you what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says that Amar Rabbi Gamliel, below says, I offended Rabbi Yeshua, this wasn't good, and I made him come with his walking stick, and then because of that, they appointed a new leader of the Sanhedrin. He said, Ezel va'afaise Rabbi Yeshua, I think I owe him an apology. I think I need to pacify him, kind of make up with him. Ki mota levesa, when it comes to Sas, chazinhu la'ashiyasa, or la'ashisa, the vesa de meshachran. He sees that the walls of the house are black. Rashi says, Kosle beso shel Rabbi Yehoshua shahoya shchorot, that the walls were black. Why were they black? For smoke.
Well, fire.
From smoke. No, he wasn't living in a burned out house. He was working with fire. He was a blacksmith. A blacksmith, by the way, is probably like being a menial laborer today. It wasn't a white collar job. So if you're going to tell me that once Rashi explained Ashisa, he doesn't have to explain it again, I'm going to ask you, he had to explain it on page 28 of the Gemara. He had to explain it on page 20, 40, 54 of the Gemara, but he couldn't speak about it on page 56. Why?
Good question.
It's a good question, no? And it gets even stranger. And it gets stranger because, in fact, there's a Gemara in Bava Kama where Rashi also goes ahead and explains the word. And the Gemara Bava Kama. Now, what you need to know is that when Rashi says something in the Chumash, he never says it again. And it's not
the same in the Gemara.
True. That is correct. What you're saying is absolutely correct, Michael. The Klolei Rashi, the rules of Rashi that we use in the Chumash, do not apply to the Gemara. The Rebbe isolated and identified a whole slew of rules of Rashi, and he demonstrated this with clarity. It's like an unbelievable thing, how there was rules in Rashi. The Rashi operates by a certain set of rules. And the Rebbe used these set of rules to answer many of the questions that people ask about Rashi.
Is this documented anywhere?
Yeah. Somebody actually put a book together from all of the Rebbe's sichos called Klalei Rashi. It's incredible. So the Rebbe does, I did hear once from the Rebbe that the Gemara, Rashi's commentary on the Gemara is also the Pshuto Shel Gemara. The Rebbe used those words. However, we cannot necessarily assume that all of the same ideas that apply to Rashi's commentary on the Chumash apply to the Gemara. You're correct about that. Because, I'll tell you why, amongst other things, the Gemara is not homogeneous. The Gemara is not homogeneous. If you read the earlier Masechtot, the earlier tractates of Talmud, and you come to the later tractates of Talmud, it becomes much more difficult. And you could see that the heavy editing, they combed over the early tractates again and again and again. Thousands and thousands of geniuses spent thousands or hundreds of thousands of brain hours on every tiny detail. Later on, the Gemara is not as precise.
What about this guy Bromberg you were talking about?
Yeah, Bomberg's just a printer. He's like...
I know he's a printer, but he's the one that lost a bunch of notes and everything.
No, he didn't lose notes. He reset, the story goes that he reset the Gemara without the paragraphs.
Without
The
any
story goes.
breaks, not paragraphs, no breaks, no periods, nothing.
Correct.
It's one run-on sentence.
Correct.
That's insane.
It's insane and insanely difficult, and it has ruined learning Gemara for many generations. Yeah, and many people.
I thought he lost Masechet too.
No. He had the whole Shas, but the Shas that we have, remember, our enemies, the big tzaddikim, were burning our manuscripts. We didn't have any whole Shas. They burned printed Talmud, and they burnt, we had to literally suffer to preserve Torah. They were under attack, relentless attack, time and again.
So do we have gaps?
First of all, we do have certain gaps. We're missing entire tractates. We're missing Masechet Shkalim. Doesn't exist in the Talmud Bavli.
Right.
Doesn't exist. It's only in Talmud Yerushalmi. It's very interesting.
There are some people that have gone into what's that crap in Rome?
No, in the Vatican they didn't find Gemaras. In the Vatican, what they found is the primary person who did this was a man whose name was Rabbi Menachem Meir Blau, who was Rabbi Chodekov's brother-in-law. So Rebbe Secretary's brother-in-law. And Rabbi Blau was a Torah genius, a very eccentric fellow. And he managed to get into the Vatican, and he took pictures with his very sophisticated camera, and he went out with microfilm. And he published dozens of Sfarim of Rishonim. Like one of the famous Rishonim whose name was Rabbi Avraham min HaHar. Rabbi Avraham, the mountain Jew, from the mountain, who nobody had his writings before. And they're languishing in the Vatican. And you could ask the same question. Why can't the Vatican take out the menorah that they have and show it to everybody? And why can't the Vatican, how did it become theirs? It's a good question. Anyway, let's not get sidetracked. So my point is this. My point is that the Gemara is not homogeneous. And because the Gemara is not homogeneous, you cannot expect Rashi always to comment and explain things in the same way, because sometimes the Gemara requires more explanation, more elucidation. Sometimes the Gemara is harder to understand, sometimes the Gemara is going to be easier to understand. Number one. Number two, Rashi himself did not complete his commentary on the entire Talmud either. So there's a lack of homogeneity, whereas when it comes to Rashi's commentary on the Chumash, now that is as precise as it gets. Anyway, in Rashi's commentary, in Masechet Bava Kama, on page 50, the Gemara speaks about the word le'oshin, or le'oshav. And over there, le'oshav is understood. Listen to what Rashi says. He says, Yesod lechomat beito al pnei kol rochev habayit. This refers to the outer foundation of the facade, of the elevation of the outside of the house. So if the front of the house is on the west, it would be the foundation of the western elevation. That's what Rashi says. Eitzel Reshut HaRabim. And Rashi says, if you want to know what this word means, I would suggest to you that you look in the book of Ezra. And in the book of Ezra, you will find in the 4th chapter a word that sounds very similar. And this got me really curious. Guess where I went?
Ezra.
Of course, I went to the book of Ezra. He said, guess what I found in the book of Ezra? Yes, it's true. It's actually true. Verse 12 in the 4th chapter, and it speaks about the rebuilding of Jerusalem. You know the famous Cyrus cylinder? This is where it is. It's in the 4th chapter of Ezra. He talks about returning to Jerusalem, and we hear about Achashverosh and Achtarshasa, whatever his name was. All those figures, historical figures, they all show up over here. And then we hear about walls. And it's written, of course, in Aramaic, the book of Ezra. And it says that the Jewish king, Yadia lehevi lemalka liyudai, make sure it's known to the Jewish king that when he comes to Yerushalayim, kiryata meradata uviyashta binyan v'shuraya. So the Mefarshim say, what is this talking about? And ashachlele, they should fix the city. And it says, v'ushaya yochitu, and the ushaya should be threaded. That's literally what it sounds like. So the Mitzudas Tzion says, Inyan Yesod, it refers to the foundation. La'ashishai kir, from the wall.
Load-bearing wall.
Load-bearing wall. I love that word. Very good. So the Mitzudas David says in his commentary that we're referring to over here is to fix Mekom HaMekulkul, the areas that were ruined, Liyais Kol HaYesoid B'Tabur Acha, to make sure that the foundation is uninterrupted. So that's the meaning of threaded. It should be one solid foundation. Because you have a foundation and then the foundation is interrupted, you can't build a strong wall on a broken foundation. So he says, make sure that the foundations are fixed. And the Ibn Ezra says something very similar. And in fact, Rashi says, what are we talking about over here? Rashi, in his commentary on the book of Ezra, says, what does it mean, Oshia? He says, Oshia means Haksolim. He says the walls. The walls. Here Rashi doesn't say foundation. It's funny. Here, when he talks about it in Masechet Bava Kama, he says, Yesod lechomot beito. The foundation of, that's what Rashi says in the Gemara. And Rashi says, you want to know more about this word? Go back to the book of Ezra. And here in the book of Ezra, the Mitzudas David says foundation, the Ibn Ezra says foundation, and Rashi says kotel, wall. And I'm like, what? What's going on over here? Rashi in Bava Kama says it means foundation, and he sends you back to Ezra. And in Ezra he says it means wall. Haksolim. And he says, what does it mean? What does it mean yechitu? Yechitu is like a chut. He says lashon psil. It's like a thread, like imichut from a strap. And he says the point is shehem chofrim umechabrim haksolim zeh, that they are dug in and they connect the walls to each other. In other words, the foundation is what connects, because walls sometimes built in pieces, but it's on a common foundation. So,
It's like a class.
so it's like a clasp. Yeah, but it's built like in a foundational way, right? And that's why I love what you said, load-bearing wall. So I'm asking myself, what is going on over here? I don't understand. Rashi twice explains this word in Masechet Brachot
That's foundation.
as a wall.
No,
In Bava Kama,
foundation.
no, in Brachot it says it both times wall. In Bava Kama he says it's a foundation. Sends us off to the book of Ezra where everybody else says it's a foundation, and there he says it's a wall. I'm like, Rashi, please help me at it. What is going on over here? Okay, so I'm going to answer. I have an answer to this question. I think I figured out the answer, but let's go first a little further in the Gemara. So the Gemara says like this now. Okay, fine. So the Gemara says that he said, I saw that Ashisa de Nafal. I saw the foundations or the walls. I don't know, load-bearing wall. I saw the foundations collapse. That's what he says. Rashi doesn't say anything about this. That's what he tells Bar Hedaya. So Bar Hedaya responds to Rava, now that he's been paid, right? Because Rava came with his wallet this time, and he says, "Okay, I have an interpretation for you." He says,
one.
"A very, very nice interpretation for you." He said, "Don't worry. Your house collapsed. It's good. It's wonderful when your house collapses." Hello? Are you joking with me or something? Who wants to see that his house collapses? So he explains to him, Amar lei nechasim below mitzarim kanet. You are going to be buying boundless residuals. You're getting boundless residuals. How does he get that? From a wall that collapsed to bound. How does he get that? Good question. Now, here Rashi does have something to say. This is shocking. Rashi says, below Mitzarim, he's explaining the word without any limits. Mitzar means a limit, right? Mitzrayim is narrow straits, it's narrow, it's a limit. Little Rashi says. He says, what does it mean below Mitzarim? I mean, ostensibly, he should be explaining the word nechasim. What kind of residuals are boundless? So he says, below Mitzarim, nachala below Mitzarim. In an inheritance, a nachala, without Mitzarim. Like a homestead, a heritage property. He says, Kolomar, in other words, I'm talking real estate. Karkaot, I'm talking about very wide swaths of earth, rechovim verabim. Very wide areas, very wide properties, big properties, wide properties. So at this point, your head starts exploding. Rashi doesn't say anything about Ashisa. He can't explain the word to us. He doesn't even tell us what fell down. But when it comes to explaining the words nechasim, which I mean, nechasim need no explanation. Everybody knows what nechasim are, residuals. I could have any kind of property. Well, it could be property, it could be movables, any kind of residuals. Here, Rashi changes the word from nechasim, instead inserts a different word, which is nachala, which could be an inheritance, and he says, Kiloimar, let me tell you what I mean. Just to make sure you understand me. What I mean to say is wide open property. Wide open real estate. What? What is going on over here? First of all, how did he manage to interpret a broken house? Broken house?
Good.
That's good. That's ruined. That's ruined property. That's ruined real estate. Nobody come to you and say, I have great news for you. What? Your buildings have collapsed. Seriously? That's terrible. No, it's great. Why? Because now they're wide open. Now it's a machaya. You have no limitations now. You have wide open properties. Said nobody normal ever. Are you kidding? that's
really good insurance.
unless they're meshuga. And here all of a sudden, and Rashi changes this around. So the truth is, I think that Rashi is tremendously bothered with this Gemara. I think that Rashi is like, what does that even mean? How could you have a nechasim b'li mitzarim? How could you have residuals that are endless? How could you have that? I mean, like, you have endless amounts of what? Nothing's endless. Gold, silver, it's endless? How could it be endless?
Limited.
Everything's limited. He's limited.
Well,
Yeah.
aspirations are not limited.
Aspirations. We're talking about possessions.
Oh, you're talking about like tangible things?
That's what a nechasim are. Nechasim are not aspirations. Nechasim are things you own. If they're things you own, then they have to be a certain amount.
Don't they have something called fences in those days? Like, how can you have boundless amount of property? Like, did they not have divisions of property?
I don't think it really means boundless, literally. It means
So
massive.
it obviously can't mean boundless. But why do we use the term boundless? Something's not making sense here. So this is what I saw the Mefarshim say, and this makes a lot of sense to me. Nechasim, possessions or property, is a word that can be used to describe either movable possessions or it can be used to describe real estate. Sometimes, for example, in the ketubah that we write, so in the ketubah it says that the kala, that the bride, has a lien on the properties of the chasan, of the husband, nechasim the islahoi nachrayas, ude les lahoi nachrayas, that there is, so to speak, responsibility, you have to back up, and the ones you don't have to back up. What does this mean? It means if a woman, if God forbid the marriage goes south, so now she has to get a payout. So she has a lien on this property, or on his residuals. Or God forbid he predeceases her. So in that case, you have to be able to get the indebtedness. So what happened if he owned property and he sold it to somebody else?
He doesn't own it.
Yeah, but you have to pay out the lien.
So the answer is, if there's a lien on property, then even if you're a buyer, you have to give the property back because there was a lien against the property.
Well, no, you have to deal with the lien.
Right.
To deal with the lien. So this is called nechasim the islahi nachrayas, ude les lahi nachrayas. Some nechasim, there is people, the seller takes responsibility, and sometimes the seller could write, no responsibility. This is at your own risk. At your own risk, do as you please. Do as you please. You want to buy it, buy it. Don't come back and have expectation that I'm going to back this up. This is at your own, this is not a store. Okay, so here's this. It's called les lahi nachrayas, and we know that this could refer to property, or sometimes it could be referring to possessions also. Possessions are inherently les lahi nachrayas. The only time you have a chrayas is on property. Liens are on properties. Liens are generally not on residuals, unless somebody made the residual into something called hapoitiki. Hapoitiki means that this is what you're going to take from. I'm putting up this as collateral, so then if that gets sold, you can go after the person who sold it because there was a lien placed on that particular item or possession. And the point is this: it makes no sense whatsoever to use the word boundless for possessions. Doesn't make any sense. However, the Mefarshim say like this: it might make sense to use that for what we're going to call property where you can't see the end of. What looks like boundless, you can't see the end of it. So Rashi says, let me explain to you what the word nechasim means over here. Nechasim means karkaot rechavim v'rabim, many properties. So there's like this joke they tell of a rancher who comes to Israel, and he's talking to a guy in a kibbutz, and the rancher from Texas says, I own hundreds and hundreds of acres, he says, in the Texas heartland. I can get in my pickup truck, I can drive for 6 hours and still be on my own property. And the guy from the kibbutz says, yeah, I had a truck like that too. So the point is this. The point is that when you would say boundless land is where you can't see the borders. The eye can only see so far. As far as the eye can see. Ever heard that expression? This is all yours as far as the eye can see. We call that within eye shot. Within eye shot. What Bar Hedaya was saying to Rava is, you're going to come into real estate. It's going to be beyond eye shot. You're not even going to see the scrimmage of your property. That's what this means, the collapsing walls. And when I saw the Mefarshim explaining Rashi like this, I said, aha. This is why Rashi did not explain this as foundations or walls. Because listen to me carefully, I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. Rashi didn't know and didn't care exactly what Rava saw. It didn't matter if he saw walls or foundations. It wasn't relevant for pshat. Now, when we talk about walls collapsing and you're right there, so obviously it has to be walls collapsing, because a foundation collapses. If the wall stayed up, you weren't in danger. Obviously, if the foundation cracks, you're going to be in trouble later on. But if a foundation cracks, the wall stays, you're not a problem. In Daf Nun Daled, he has to explain what it means. It means walls. It means walls. Okay. When Rabbi Gamliel comes to Rabbi Yeshua's house and he saw the black foundations, how did he see the foundations? Foundations are beneath the ground. He has to explain the Gemara. So he explains Koisle Habayis. He says the walls of the house. That's what he saw. It's what he could see. In the Gemara, Masechet Bevakama, it's the other way around. It's not about the walls. If you learned what the Gemara is saying, you understand that it's talking about the foundations. The foundations. Going back to the book of Ezra, Rashi is explaining to us how they have to fix the foundations so that the walls will stand strong. So Rashi's basically saying to us that the word ashisa could be load-bearing or foundational kind of wall, or foundational, or it could be an actual wall. For Rava, it doesn't matter if you saw the foundations fall away or if you saw the walls collapse. The point is that the outer scrimmage of the house, that which locks the house in, wasn't there. So he said to him, whatever you saw. The point was, whatever boxes you in, he said, that is going to collapse, which means when you have property, you won't see the border line of the property. Now, if we learn pshat like this, and I want to humbly suggest this is the right pshat, if we learn pshat like this, we understand why Rashi didn't say anything. And also we have an appreciation of Rashi's comment. Rashi doesn't just comment. When Rashi is not just giving us the interpretation of a word, when Rashi tells us about a word, he's telling us about the word because it's relevant to know what the word means. By the way, interestingly enough, in the Sefer HaRoeh, which is like a book, almost like a dictionary written by time of the Rishonim, it says ashisa. He brings the word down, and he brings a Yiddish word. This is like middle ages Yiddish. He goes avant. We call it avant. In modern the Yiddish we speak in the 20th century, it's a vav vav aleph nun tes, but he writes vand with a dalad. The Yiddish spelling is different. It's like Old English. So he says vand, and he says, where do I get this from? He says brachos nun vav chazoi ashisa denofel pirush kaisel. So the HaRoeh explains it as a wall. The HaRoeh made a point of explaining it as a wall. Rashi didn't bother explaining. It's funny. The HaRoeh is not even writing a commentary on the Talmud, but he cites this Gemara that Rashi doesn't explain. 3 other places Rashi explains, and three other places in Shas, and then in the book of Ezra he explains. And here Rashi says nothing. And here is where the HaRoeh uses. The HaRoeh doesn't cite the Gemara on Daf Nun Daled. The HaRoeh doesn't cite the Gemara on Daf Chav Ches. The HaRoeh doesn't cite the Gemara on Bava Kama Daf Nun. The HaRoeh doesn't cite the book of Ezra. He cites Daf Nun Vav. Our Gemara now with Rashi says nothing. But this gives you such a beautiful appreciation of how Rashi works. Rashi doesn't emphasize or speak about the specifics of the meaning of a word. Rashi is focused on the meaning of a concept. It doesn't matter, is the point. It doesn't matter. What exactly did Rava see? Bar Hedaya didn't care. It didn't matter. The symbolism was what was important to him. So he explained it doesn't matter. It's not about walls collapsing. It's about borders. It's about strictures falling away so that what you have is a nachala, not possessions, a nachla. That you have boundless property where you can't see the border of the property, the border line. All right, so not bad.
Oh, very good.
Not bad. We have a few dollars from Rava and the words of Bar Hedaya with a little bit of contemplation of what Rashi says and doesn't say, and all of a sudden we get a great interpretation. All right, let's move on. Next. So far, so good. So the Gemara says, Omar Lei, he said to him, and presumably he's still paying or is on the same dime or dollar. Chazoi apadna de abaya dinefal. I saw the apadna of abaya, and it collapsed. And then he says, v'chasyon avke, The dust covered me.
Who's younger and older?
Abaya is older. Abaya is older, and Abaya predeceases Rava, and Rava becomes the Rosh Hashiva instead of Abaya of his academy, right? So now I'm just going to point out to you, Rava saw Ashisa when it was his house, but it was Abaya's house. He sees a padna. What's the difference between an apadna and a shiz? There's more buildings are collapsing over here. So if more buildings are collapsing, what in Hebrew is going on over here? The truth is that I don't respond to ridiculous comments online, especially if they don't have a connection to the Gemara, but to whoever it may concern, Jonah, and your comment on my pronunciation of Hebrew, and that you feel you're an expert of Hebrew. So none of us actually speak Hebrew perfectly. Sage Rava writes this very clearly. And neither the Ashkenazic pronunciation is perfect, nor is the Sephardic pronunciation perfect, or the Mizrahi pronunciation. For whatever reason, when they decided to formulate modern Hebrew, which are a hodgepodge of different languages, including Hebrew, they decided to take that accent. The most accurate pronunciation of Hebrew is the strangest to all of us. That is the Yemenite Jews. The Yemenite Jews have the most accurate pronunciation of Hebrew, who, by the way, in many things, have a pronunciation that is decidedly Eastern Europe. Like, for example, the cholam, which most people from North America say cholam because of the German influence of the O in Yemen, and in Taman they say chelam, which is exactly how the Lithuanian and the Russian Jews say it. So it's not even so clear who speaks what. The point is not how we pronounce. The pronunciation is much less important than the meaning. And if you don't like my pronunciation, a gute Nacht to you. That means good night. Fine pronunciation you do like. The focus here is not on pronunciation. The focus here is on the meaning of the Gemara.
Did you say good
And by
yeah.
and by the way, the Gemara is not written in Hebrew. Just by the way. Okay. Let's get back to the Gemara here. So what's with the apadna? So for sure Rashi's going to say something, right? For sure Rashi's going to tell us what an apadna is. Right? Let's take a look at Rashi. What does Rashi say about the apadna? He says absolutely nothing. Oh my grownhead, what is going on over here? Why does Rashi say anything? But he does comment on the dust. That he comments. V'chasyon avke. So he says, Kisui afar haporeach mimapolat hachoma. Ooh, all of a sudden Rashi found his voice here. Now it is a wall. And he says that there is dust in the air, because when buildings collapse, then we have dust in the air. So the dust in the air from the collapse of the walls, and here it is walls, is what coats Rava. Did you ever see, there's a picture out there of a woman, an African-American woman, walking out of the collapse of the Twin Towers. She's walking through the dust. She never passed away from all the stuff that she breathed. If they gave her a name or something. She looks like a walking like clay or ash or something. You know the picture I'm talking about?
Yeah, I sure do.
It's a horrible, horrible picture. She's like one of the survivors of 9/11.
Not really.
Uh-huh.
She's not a survivor.
Well, she died a few years later.
Oh, years? I thought she died
No,
almost immediately.
I think she died a few years later.
Oh, okay.
And she had she breathed in all kinds of horrible things that destroyed her lungs. But she's covered, she's caked in dust, right? So that's like a picture, what's called caked in dust. She's caked in dust from the collapse. Somehow she survived, but she was covered with literally like centimeters of dust.
Yeah.
And she's like white from dust. You see, it's a terrifying picture. You could make out features, but it's terrifying. So this is what it sounds like happens to Abai. In his dream, he's covered with dust from the collapse of a building, because when buildings collapse, there's a lot of dust. So why doesn't Rashi tell us what an apadna is? So I don't know, maybe Rashi doesn't want to tell us what an apadna is. But guess what? He does tell us what an apadna is elsewhere in Shas. You gotta be kidding. I'm not kidding with you. There's a Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, and it's found on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. And the Gemara says the word apadna. And the Gemara, Rashi says, what is apadna? Traklin shel malachim. A palace. A palace, a royal palace. An apadna is a royal palace. So it's a royal palace. So he saw the collapse of a palace. Why doesn't Rashi say anything? The HaRoeh, by the way, also says something about apadna. The HaRoeh says, he uses Yiddish because he was living in Poland, and the HaRoeh says palats. That's Yiddish. Palace.
That's-
He's actually pronounced it palace. And he says, you know where he got the word that it's a palace from? Bechalem is the Rava. He doesn't say the Gemara Masechet Shabbos. Once again, he cites the Gemara here in the Afnun Vav. The Chalem is the Rava, HaRoeh, apadne the abaya the nofel. And he also cites the Gemara in Masechet Moed Katan, where, by the way, Rashi does not say anything. So once again, this is like mysterious. What is going on with this lack of apadna? Why aren't we getting a commentary on the meaning of apadna? Now,
Here they translate it as mansion, no?
mansion. He says Traklin Shel Malachim, so it's more than just a mansion. So in the book of Daniel, which of course is also written, some of it's in Hebrew, some it's in Aramaic. In the book of Daniel, the end of the 11th chapter, it says, Vayita ohalo, or ohale apadno. He set up he planted, literally what it means, ohale, the tents of apadno. Now, tents of apadno do not sound like a palace. So, Metzudas Tzion says, Inyonoi armoin. An armoin is a castle. A castle, he says. And he says, you want to know where I got that from? I'll tell you where I got it from. Metzudas Tzion says, there's a Gemara, Masechet Brachot. Chazoi apadna da abaya the nofel. I saw the apadna of abaya that collapsed. So he says it's a castle. It's a castle, not a palace. It's a castle. So how does a castle get to a tent? And he says, there were tents that were as gorgeous as a castle. I remember years ago seeing a picture of Napoleon's tent on the battlefield.
Yes.
And it was unbelievable opulence, right? So I guess they could make a tent very beautiful. They can make tents that are like just unbelievable.
Yeah, you would never know you're in it.
You wouldn't know you're in a tent. Exactly. Today they have this also. They have these tents they set up for you, and you're like, it's beautiful.
They make beautiful.
They're called RVs.
Now, no, not RVs. Now it's interesting. Reb Sage Gaon says that it's talking about cloth over here. It's called cloth, he says. And he says the cloth is embroidered. It's embroidered like a beautiful building would be design, like designs on a building. He calls it like embroidery, like an embroidered the brocade of the tent. Rashi doesn't say anything, interestingly. So what actually is it? And I'm going to go on a limb here and say that Rashi was pretty sure it was a building, because he says kosel, he says the wall, but whether it was a castle, or whether it was a palace, or a mansion, doesn't make a difference. That's not the point. This is a dream, my friends. It's a dream. It doesn't matter what he saw in his dream. What matters is a very, very ornate-looking house collapsed. That's what matters.
Right.
So Rashi doesn't speak about that. What does he speak about? He says, where does the dust come from? So Rashi explains that the dust comes from the collapse. He's covered with dust from the collapse. In other words, there's not two separate things. It's not that Rava saw Abaya's house collapse and he saw himself covered with dust. He was covered by the collapse. That's the key element here. That's the key element. And therefore, Bar Hedaya says, so what does it mean? And he says, I'll tell you what it means. It means Abaya shochev, Abaya is going to pass on, umisivte osyo legabach, his yeshiva comes to you. His yeshiva comes to you. In other words, Bar Hedaya interprets the structure that collapsed as the yeshiva that collapsed. It doesn't mean the yeshiva building collapsed. It means the students. What held them together was their devotion, their commitment to this teacher.
Whatever it was that makes a yeshiva.
What makes a yeshiva? I'll tell you what makes a yeshiva. Exactly. And very often, you're right, the Rosh Yeshiva makes a yeshiva.
Sure.
The Rosh Yeshiva makes a yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva has to be a Ruach HaChaim. The Rosh Yeshiva is not simply a functionary. He's not simply another one of the staff. He's the leader of the yeshiva. And you go into, and it doesn't have to be even in a Torah setting. If you go into any kind of area, if the leader is down, everything is down. Everything is down. And even in political parties or in companies, there's a certain reverence that's afforded to the leader. they'll call him the leader. They don't say his name. They don't call him by his first name. They call him the leader. It's a culture. Because when you make a leader, put him in the leadership position, when you afford him the respect that the position, it's not about the individual, it's about the position, what happens is you actually give him the ability to lead that way. Like it says, there's a teaching on the words of the Mishnah, Asei lecha rav, make yourself a rav. What does that mean? Like, make a golem? Build a Frankenstein? How do you make a rav? Say, appoint a rav. So it says, give the respect. Give the respect, make him your rav. You say, because people could say, that's going to be my rabbi? Oh, are you kidding? When I was a kid, there were rabbis. I saw real rabbis. This is a rabbi? So, Rabbi Taub once told me that there was a guy in his shul who used to endlessly complain. He's probably not alive anymore. And he said the guy used to say to him, when I was a kid, we had to walk to school for an hour and it was uphill both ways. He said, you know that guy is, huh? The people say, when I was a kid, there was rabbi. That was a rabbi. This is a rabbi. It's a clown. This is not a rabbi.
Come to Rabbi Taub on Shabbos and say, it's too hot and it's too cold. I mean, what do you say to that?
I guess you say amen, right? So the point then is, and this is the important point, that Abaya was not simply a teacher in the yeshiva. Rava was also teaching in the yeshiva. Abaya was the spirit of the yeshiva. He embodied the yeshiva. It was in his image. The student learned the way he learned. And by the way, if you speak to, when real yeshivas, to have a Rosh Yeshiva, a powerful Rosh Yeshiva, the students will say, we learned by. He's not the only one who gives a shiur in the yeshiva. There are many people who give shiur. They learned under the tutelage of. They have the spirit, the schnit they call it, the cut, the pattern of. They learn from a certain So that's what Abaya's yeshiva collapses, and that the yeshiva, the dust settles on Rava. The whole point here is that he's coded by something that comes from one place to the other. By the way, Rava is a very strong personality, very different than Abaya, and Rava and Abaya almost always have different opinions in halacha. And the halacha ends up being like Abaya Rava most of the time, interestingly enough, with the exception of the famous Yal Kigam. Just 6 cases where the halacha is like Abaya. So it's very different. It's very different. It's almost like Abaya's loss is almost like a collapse. It's an end of an era, and now Rava begins. And Rava is a very different kind of Torah teacher, a very different kind of Rosh Yeshiva. So that one building collapses, and the dust settles on Rava, he becomes the new Rosh Yeshiva. So I think it's very positive.
That's what we used to call learning, Rava and Abaya.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And like in Poland, they used to say, let's do some Abaya Veruva.
There you go.
Because they're so famous. Correct. And Abaya and Rava have very different ways of learning things. Okay, now it gets very strange. Now it gets like most ominous of all. And I think this is what really forced Rava to say, I got to pay for this because I got to find a way out of this. But the question is, what does this even have to do here? Omar Lei says to him like this. Shema'at tesoch mevadron. Oh, sorry. Where am I? Chazi apan nafel. I'm ahead of myself. Let's go. Nafel. Circle. Omar Lei chaze apadna didi. Now my mansion collapsed. He said, oh no, what does that mean? V'asukul alma shakol leventa. Here he says they're not taking, it's not dust, here it's stones. My mansion, my palace, my castle collapses, and everybody's taking stones all over the place. Omar Lei, he said to him, Shematasach mevadron ba'olma. Your teachings are going to become widespread. And the stones represent your teachings. Now I want to just point out 3 things here. Wow. I want to point something out, that all 3 of these cases dealt with structures that collapsed. And it climaxes with bricks, not dust. Right. In the beginning, it's not, right, it's just like things are collapsing and we don't see, there's no fallout. Then there's dust, and then in the end, which is like fully, wholly positive, he said, that's not negative. That's not negative. Here it's stones that represents that your teachings are going to be spread forth. I would like to suggest that all of these 3 ideas have a common theme, but I'm going to only be able to share that with you when we get to the next most frightening kind of imagery. Omar Lei said like this: Chazai de ibka reshe v'netar mikri. And I think this translates as my skull cracked and my brains fell out. How does it translate there in English? My head split and
Brain fell out.
my brain fell out. Okay, this is like OMG. I think this is why he paid the money. I think this was the scariest thing of all. Like how are you going to make something positive out of that?
Guilt, yeah, okay.
So he gives him a very strange explanation. He said, what does that mean? This is Amar Lei. He says, Udra mibei soja nofik. The stuffing is going to come out of your pillows. Is that how he translates it there?
Yeah.
Feathers have come out of the...
Feather come out of the pillows.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well,
What does that mean? Rashi says, what does it mean? Udra mibei soja hamuchin. This is what we call down. Muchin is down. The stuffing. Yotzin min hakar are going to go out of the pillow, she b'merasha seisav, which is around your head. What? First of all, what's so good about that? I mean, it's better than your head splitting open and your brains falling out. It's better to lose your pillow than your head. Okay, I get that. But what does that even mean?
It's a dream.
It's a dream. It's supposed to have meaning. Before, the dreams had meaning. Here, Rava finds out that he's going to have incredible wealth.
The meaning is that feathers will come out of your pillow.
What kind of meaning is that? What does that mean? Feathers come in my pillow, feathers come out of my pillow. What do I care about my pillow? What are you serious?
How can that even be good?
First of all, how is that good if the feathers fall out of your pillow?
No, it's not so bad.
It's not so bad. I have no... What?
Your house falling down.
House falling down. What?
Yeah, but brick by brick, and that means
Okay.
that you're going to have a good
So I want to point something out here. Did you notice that once again Rashi did not tell us what the meaning of the word is? He never said what sodja is. He just said the pillows that came out of the pillow. He didn't why doesn't he translate the word? So I remembered that in the Targum Onkelos this word does show up. Where does it show up? You're gonna love this, guys. This is fantastic. It's in last week's Torah portion. That's why I still remember it. I just did the Maver said last week. Last week's Torah portion, it said that Yaakov lay down to sleep,
Oh, right.
but he didn't have any bedding. So what did he do? It says, "Vayikach me avnei hamakom." He took the stones of the place, and he vayosem marashosav. He placed it around his head. How does Onkelos translate the word mirashotav? How does he translate it? He says asadohi. Asadohi. What's the word in the Gemara here?
Sadoyi.
Sadohi. Sodya.
Sadya.
Sadya. Sadohi. And then you go to the Targum Yenusim Ben Uziel. It says Vishavi isodyi vishachiv. I placed the sodye, the stones, like a pillow. And the Targum Yerushalmi says Vishavei tchois asdei reisha. He put his head on the stone. So it's actually in the Pirush of Targum Yenusim, he points out that there's two opinions here as what this means, because some of the Chazal, like in the Zohar, it says that Yaakov put the stone under his head as a pillow. And then Rashi here seems to say, which follows what Onkelos says, that he places stones around his head to be able to protect it. And in case you think that pillows have to be soft, I did some research and I found out that in ancient Egypt, they used to have a hard mold that they would place under their head to keep their head lifted as a pillow, like these hard wood molds that people would sleep in. They didn't have soft pillows. So the head should be a little bit lifted up, elevated. It wasn't a soft pillow.
Seems like a gimme to me.
I don't know. They weren't that stupid, those people. They knew that the head has to be uplifted, right? And by the way, when I was a kid, and I went with my uncle, and then later on when I was in my 20s, I visited many prisons. And one of the things I found that in the worst prisons, and I know this here when I was in my chaplaincy also, when I went into the holding cells, because you have to be a sworn officer to go to the holding cell, and I had to bring kosher food to somebody. So they don't have pillows in these places because they're afraid that people might try to hurt themselves.
With a pillow?
And you can supposedly Jeffrey Epstein hung himself with a pillow or something. I don't think that actually happened, but that's just my hunch. But the point is that they have these cots which have a mold of a pillow in it, which is interesting. Have a mold of a pillow, so the head is raised. Yeah, you shouldn't know that. We should never know that. I'm just saying that there is a thing to it. So Yaakov could have raised his head a little bit by virtue of using a stone, and it seems in antiquity that was the case. Here's my point, guys. Listen to what I'm thinking. Okay, so this is business with the stones. Did you notice that we have a pillow here, and the pillow is connected in the Torah? There's only one time that the word as and it's stones. It's stones. Aha, it's stones. So I was thinking to myself, and maybe I'm crazy. I was thinking to myself that this is all one continuation. What's the continuation? How do teachings end up being stones? So listen to this piece of Torah Or from last week. The Alter Rebbe says in Torah Or, he says, what is Yaakov taking stones for? Vayikach ma'avnei amokim is taking stones. So the Alter Rebbe says, Hine noida, behold it is known, sha'avonim nikraim otiot, that stones are referred to in Kabbalistic literature as letters, characters. Ukameshakosav b'sefer Yetzirah, like it says in the Book of Formation, Shnei avonim bonot shnei batim. Now that sounds what they would call in Sanskrit a kohan. It sounds like some kind of riddle. 2 stones build 2 homes. Never yet have we seen two stones that can build 2 homes. But it's not literal, it's a metaphor. How do 2 stones build 2 homes? Well, if you say that a stone is a letter, so let's take the word Aleph and Beis. The Aleph and Beis are 2 stones. How many houses can they build? A house is a word, because it houses a concept. Av and Ba. Av and Ba. And then it goes on to say, Shalosh Avonim, 3 stones, Bainos Shisha Batim. That builds you 6 houses, because every word houses something. Letters in them of themselves are meaningless. Letters in and of themselves. But when you make a configuration of letters, all of a sudden they spell words. And words house meaning. They convey meaning. They contain meaning.
Here, you know that, right? They translate it as bricks.
Okay.
Make a difference?
They say bricks. I don't know. It doesn't say. It doesn't. I don't know. Why does it have to be bricks?
Why would they say,
I mean, Leventa is usually a brick, to be sure. Okay, fine. But I'm not getting I'm not obsessing over the stones or bricks.
Let's try and understand it as
Building units.
okay.
Brick, stone. It's the same idea, right?
They're all like that.
Oh. Lihiyois, says the Alter Rebbe explains, from many stones you can have a home. Inside the home you're able to live. From many letters come words, and what lives in words and sentences and paragraphs and compositions? Ideas. The stones come together to form ideas. And the Alter Rebbe says also, Avonim is like Bechinas Daimim, it's inanimate. The stones, the letters, the bricks themselves have no meaning. Stones themselves have no meaning. It's the lowest level. But he says it could be used, it could be put together. And he connects us to the idea, B'dvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu, and so on and so forth. We're going to go on over here. So my thought is like this. My thought is that this is the business of the stones is actually a metaphor over here. It's a metaphor. So when Rava's home falls down, it's his way of limiting things. He limits things like words, a definition, defining things. They limit things. You limit things by their definition. Rava's going to have a nachal b'li metzarim. He's going to have a thing that's hard to define. His wealth will be hard to define. You can even go beyond the land. It's not even just seeing the borders. It's undefinable wealth. It's like wealth which you don't even know what it's going to turn into. Like when you have an idea or you have a company that's taking over. How much is it worth? It's in flux. It's in motion. And then we have Abaya's yeshiva. What is it metaphorized? As a structure, as an edifice. The edifice collapses, so gesund, because Abaya's teachings are very different than Rava's teachings. So gesund. And then we have the stones that are being distributed all over the place. The stones are being distributed. And this is also along the lines of teachings. The stones are being spread around. Now I want you to know that Ben Yehoyada, he basically has a cow with regard to this interpretation. And he says, the Ben Yehoyada says, give me a break, he says, Davar zeh yipolei ma'oid. And the Ben Yehoyada doesn't usually get fazed by things you would think unusual in the Gemara. The Ben Yehoyada is very, very sedate about it. He just explains everything. He said, this is very weird, he says. This is astonishing. He says, Imzeh pisun amiti. Suppose Ben Hedaya is right. Suppose Bar Hedaya is right, that it's going to be a pillow, an exploding pillow. He said, what is this, having some kind of pillow fight? Bishvil ma HaRoeh davar zeh min hashamayim. Why did they show it to him from heaven? That your pillow's going to rip open? Who cares? What's Rava going to do with this knowledge? And therefore, he says, I want to tell you that in my opinion, Bar Hedaya understood that this dream is not Rava's dream. It's a dream about him. He said Bar Hedaya was desperately trying to interpret this dream in some way that it wasn't as negative. Because by the way, you're going to find out that Bar Hedaya is going to get cursed by Rava.
Right.
And do you know what Bar Hedya's end is?
No.
Yeah, his head doesn't stay together.
Well, that's good.
It's pretty horrible.
He's awful.
He's an awful guy. And Bar Hedaya senses this. And I was thinking to myself, when in the prayer that we say for dreams, we say, Bein chalemis shecholmu al atzmi, whether dreams that I dream myself or shecholmu acherim alai. We need to interpret the dreams that somebody else had about us also. If somebody else has a dream about you, it can also be meaningful. I once had a dream about somebody, and it was a good dream about them getting engaged. And I went over to them and I said, I had a dream. And guess what? Attack happened. Attack happened. They said, you just dreamed that. He said, you dreamed that. True story. So this could happen. Bar Hedaya, therefore, is trying to mitigate. He's trying to downplay. He's trying to downplay. And that leads us into the last dream over here. And he says over here, Bar Hedaya knows in his heart of hearts, he made a very big mistake. He realizes now that the negativity that he engendered is going to necessarily come back to bite him. So he's desperately trying to shift things, but guess what? It doesn't always work. It's not so cast in stone that whatever you interpret the dream into being is going to be. It has to have truth to begin with. So what he said about Rava's wife was truth to it. But what he says about this with the pillows is takanarishkeit. It's a bunch of baloney. Oh. It's a bunch of baloney, and therefore it's not going to happen. He was desperately trying to deflect the negativity of the dream from upon himself. So he gave some kind of what we call, like, according to the Ben Yoyad, they gave some kind of baba maisa. And he told him, but he said it's a shaloi matzah pisar and emes. He couldn't find a real interpretation. So he fudged it, and it didn't work. Which this answers the question about destiny, and could a person decide whatever he wants? No, it's not so pashut. But Bar Hedaya was very talented. We said he had a knack for this. He sensed this is about himself, not about Rava. He somehow knew this is not the bricks. It's not that following the trajectory of Rava's dream. Something different's going on over here. And you'll see this helps us understand the next last dream for today with the breaking song, and that is, he says to him, Omar lei akriyon, this is, go back to audio, Halela mitzra'a bechelma. I heard them reading the Hallel, the Egyptian Hallel in my dream. Omar lei, he said, the Egyptian Hallel, Nisa misrachishlach. You're going to be having a miracle. A miracle is going to happen to you. Rashi says something very interesting over here.
What's the difference between
First of all, what is?
Recited?
Yeah, very good question. What is an Egyptian Hallel? What is an Egyptian Hallel? Yeah, and then what does it mean that Nisi Misachsha? So Rashi says, Halola Mitzra, Hallel Sha'anu Kodim BePesach. The Hallel that we read on Pesach is called the Egyptian Hallel. Now he says, why do we call it the Egyptian Hallel? Lefish yesh Hallel Acher, because there's another Hallel. This is Psalm 136, and that's Korei Hallel Hagodol. It's called Hallel Hagodol, and we call it Koden Lezeh Hallel HaMitzri. We call this the Egyptian Hallel. Why do we call this the Egyptian Hallel?
Only said on Passover.
But it's not really true. We say Hallel every Yom Tov. In fact, we say it every single time we say it's Rosh Chodesh. So the Sifsei Chacham asks this question. He asks exactly this question, and he says, "I don't understand." He said,
"It's in the Haggadah."
It's in the Haggadah also, but he says a very interesting thing. He says, the Sifsei Chacham says, "Af al Gaf," even though the Bishar Moyadim on other holidays and Rosh Chodesh we also read the Hallel. However, there's something different about the Hallel on Pesach, and that is that it's the only time Sheba Pesach Kodim beBeis HaKnesses uBalayla b'Shas Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's no other time we say Hallel in the house, and there's no other time we say Hallel in Shul. By the way, I gave a Shabbat Haggadah drasha from a bunch of years ago about the connection between the Hallel and Shul and the Hallel in the house. One of the reasons that we don't say a bracha on the Hallel in the house is because the bracha of the Hallel in the Shul goes for the Hallel in the house also. And that's why, in general, the mitzvahs of the night of Pesach have to be done after nightfall. So the question is, can you set up a Seder plate before? It's a real question that's asked. And the rule is that everything that is connected to the mitzvahs is supposed to be done after it's dark. But in Shulchan Aruch it says that you can daven. If you daven a little bit early, at least make sure that the Hallel is after nightfall in Shul. Why? Because the Hallel after davening is connected to the Hallel of the Seder. And everything connected to the Seder has to be at night. Be'erev teichlu matzos. B'layla hazeh, so this night. So therefore it's a very unusual Hallel. And that's why he says it's connected to the concept of the Mitzrayim. And that's why it's called. Now, the truth is that the Mefarshim also tell us, there's a Medrash about this and a Medrash Tillim about it. It says that, in the beginning it says, Hallelujah, Hallelu Avdei Hashem. So it says in the Medrash that this was said by the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh said to them, you're no longer my servants, now you are his servant. Praise Hashem. You're no longer my servants, now you're his servants.
That was the whole purpose of
and
the Exodus.
that's the whole purpose of the Exodus. Not let my nation go free, send forth my nation so they may serve me. Right. So this is not about the Declaration of Independence of the United States or Viva France or whatever, Viva la Liberté. This is not about self-determination. It's about being Hashem's servants. Exactly the point. Now, with regard to why it's called Hallel HaGadol, so the Gemara in Pesachim actually asks this question. The Gemara is in Daf, I have this somewhere here. On Daf Kuf Yud Ches, the Gemara asks, why is it called Hallel HaGadol? V'lama nikra shmoi Hallel HaGadol, and the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, v'pnei sha'akadosh baruch hu yeshiv b'rumei shel olam, God sits, so to speak. It says, and the Hallel finishes off, Haidu lekel hashamayim, and then it says, Umachalik mezaynosav l'chol breria, he gives sustenance to all life. And this is something Rabbeinu Bechaya talks about this in the Shara B'tachan, why it's called Kilo Elam Chastoi. This is the endless kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows upon us all the things we need, and He provides for us. So because HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows for us, and that's what we call Hallel HaGadol, the greatness of God sustaining all of life and giving us everything that we need. So why do we emphasize the idea of Hallel Shana Kodesh B'Pesach? Now look at the next Rashi. Rashi says, Nisei Misrachash Lecha. How do we know this? And Rashi says, Al Yedei Nisim Nikru Nisan, because of the miracles. That's why the month is called Nisan, which is a shocking statement, because the word Nisan is an Akkadian, a Sumerian name of a month, right? Rashi says, no, it's called Nisan because of a miracle. We'll hear about that later also, somebody who sees Nisan in his dream. And then it says, Shal kol tzara habali Yisrael, anytime something difficult happens to a member of Am Yisrael, to the nation of Israel, oimrim osa al geulatan, if the nation is saved, when you experience salvation, you say Hallel. Now the Sifsei Chachamim divides this Rashi into two pieces. He says Rashi is saying two different things here. Number one, through Nisim it's called Nisan, which now explains to us why we call it the Egyptian Mitzrayim, because there is no other month that's characterized by miracles like the month of Nisan. Right? That's the whole idea of Nisan is the time of miracles, and the Gemara is going to say somebody who sees Nisan in his dream, miracles are going to happen to him. So there's a connection between miracles and Nisan. And that's why it makes sense to be called the Egyptian Hallel. But what does it have to do with him? Part two. Part two is that Mitzrayim is the paradigm of Jewish life. That the Exodus is the paradigm of Jewish life. Al kol tzara habali Yisrael, any tzara, which is similar to the word Mitzrayim, narrow straits. When you're in the squeeze, when you're in a difficult situation, al kol tzara haba. So then, when you're redeemed, you say Hallel.
No, like Tzuras? You say Tzurah, it sounds like Tzuras.
Yeah, it is Tzuras. Okay. That's just Yiddish. Now this is fantastic. What's going to happen is in the salt water, in the dreams of salt water, which you're going to do next episode, what happens is Bar Hedaya is boarding a ship together with Rava, and he says, I'm out of here. I don't want to be on this boat. And why not? He said, because miracles are going to happen to him. So what's the problem? If miracles happen to him, it's happened to you too, right? So the Binyahu, who is written by the Ben Yehoyada, by the way, the Binyahu says like this, Ben Yahu says, Hallel, he didn't just hear any Hallel, he heard the Egyptian Hallel. When does the Egyptian Hallel get sung? This is Gavaldic. At the crossing of the Reed Sea. The crossing of the Reed Sea. Did everybody go through the Reed Sea? Yeah. Well, all the Jews did. Yeah, how about the Egyptians?
Well, they stayed in it.
They stayed in it. Didn't work out very well. So Bar Hedaya says, ha ha ha, what a miracle. Right, he escapes, I don't. I'm off the ship. You understand? Well, now it makes sense that these last two dreams are actually, Bar Hedaya finds himself in the middle of the dream. And he says, miracles are happening to you. And when it comes to the split open head, he says, I think that's me. And miracles are happening to you. And Bar Hedaya says, I don't want to be in company with Rava. I think at this point, I need to head off because now I'm in hot water, in big trouble. And as you'll see in the next episode, this whole thing flows in. So really now we see with clarity what's emerging from all this. It's not so simple that the person who interprets dreams can do as he or she pleases. It's not like at will, willy-nilly, you decide good things, bad things happen. There's a code, there's a transmission, there's a download, there are different possibilities. The translation or the interpretation may have influence or bearing on the implementation or the actualization of the dream, but there has to be something to actualize. You have to have something to actualize. If you don't have something to actualize, or if you're actualizing something with a fraudulent interpretation, it's not going to mean anything. So it has to be an accurate interpretation based on a knack, or at least accurate understanding or accurate concept of Torah. Then could there be a difference? And here we see the interplay of destiny and what people can change, and so on and so forth. But,
He said Hedya's going to head off.
Yeah, Hedya's going to head. Very good. Hedya's going to head off, and his head's going to be off too, as you're going to find out later. It does not end well for Bar Hedaya. Anyway, this is all she wrote for tonight. So that's what I wanted to share for this evening. Thank you all for joining. I hope you found this as enjoyable and uplifting as I did. And the beautiful thing is that Hashem's Torah...
Put it by page 56A4.
To be continued.
56A4.
To be continued. And hopefully Mashiach comes before our next class. Long before. Shekoyach, thanks for joining. Please share. And please be sure to subscribe. B'surot Tovot and Laila Tov.
I remember that.
Rabbi, all these books that you're referring to,